training is like a learner's permit where you went and you saw basic mechanics in play. You may have done some simulations in the past in your training environment. Okay, so looking back on my Scrum Master days, I'd say maybe 3 things would be something that you would want to keep top of mind. First, depending on what point of the product's journey or the project's journey you join, there might be a couple of different things you can experiment with. So if you're joining sort of mid-journey where the people are already working and the train is moving forward, if you will, then get to know the key players from a product perspective, from a process or a program management perspective, and from a delivery perspective. So there will be key players in the leadership circle around each of these forums. Get to know them, understand what is their top of mind impediments at the moment. So what are some tech impediments or system level impediments, or what are some process or program management like dependency management, synchronization type impediments? And then what are some impediments from the business standpoint? Like, is it availability of stakeholders? Is it some sort of a management of stakeholder expectation? Is it lack of prioritization? Is there too much work in progress? So get to know key people in these 3 areas, and then focus inwards among your team members also and try to find out if there are some repetitive trends of impediments. So that'd be number 1, right? So finding out these people, building some alliances with them or some relationship building with them. So regular one-on-ones and stuff. And then identifying some repetitive trends of impediments. Second, make sure that the kind of process you have picked is consistent with the kind of work you're doing, right? So that means Scrum solves a certain kind of problem. Kanban solves a certain kind of problem. Extreme programming works well with certain kind of environments. You want to make sure you don't just blindly put Scrum for everything or blindly put Kanban for everything. You want to be systematically thinking about the applicability of the flavor of Agile before you jump into a relationship with, we're going to do Scrum or Kanban or whatever. So that's number 2. Number 3, make sure in your company you talk to your Agile coaches or your whoever is championing the agenda for Agile and find out how are they measuring maturity over time. There's got to be some sort of a maturity model or a maturity dimension in place, which is looking at how teams are progressing in their maturity of Agile. So I'd say getting some familiarization with that maturity model can also help, because that will tell you exactly where you want to push the trajectory towards from a process maturity standpoint or from a team maturity standpoint. So these 3 things I'd say would be top of mind for you when you start your journey. This website has probably a few case studies. Check out agilealliance.org. Years ago, I used to work for a company called Fannie Mae, which was kind of pseudo-government funded. And we did an Agile transformation with them. There were a bunch of case studies written about our work on this website. So look up this website. You might find some case studies or some resources there about government-specific work, right? For Scrum versus Kanban, here's a really good model to look at. So the concept is called the Kinnaman model, developed by Dave Snowden. His company name is Cognitive Edge. Look up this model, look up YouTube videos about this model. There are plenty of even case studies and articles about this video. This can help you clearly delineate between when do you use Scrum, when do you use Kanban. Here is my 60-second pitch about that. Scrum generally prescribes a set of guardrails which are conducive more to a kind of work that is plannable. So if the work or the nature of your work rather is plannable for the most part, then you want to put the rigor of a sprint around it. You want to plan at the start of a sprint. You want to retro at the end of the sprint because that work is plannable. If you're doing Kanban, then you want a more free-flowing system, which means there is a lack of line of sight. So things can pop in at the last minute, which means you plan on a Monday and then on a Tuesday something changed, or you plan on a Monday and then Wednesday something changed. If that is the recurring nature of your work, there is too much volatility in your product roadmap, right? So if that's the case, putting a rigor of a sprint can create process overhead, because you might say, we'll do it for 2 weeks, but then in 2 days your plan changes. So there Kanban, which is more of a flow-based approach, where you're sort of consuming work as and when it pops up on the backlog, and you're not held hostage to that specific time duration. That might be a better fit. So that's one of many such reasons. Another reason would be in Scrum, you have dedicated roles. In Kanban, you don't have dedicated roles like you have in Scrum. So in Scrum, you have Scrum Masters, product owners, developers. In Kanban, you don't have those dedicated roles. You can rotate to a certain degree. Kanban is more conducive to environments where you can have multiple mutually exclusive goals running in parallel. In Scrum, You want people on a team to be all working together on one overarching goal, which is sort of common between them. And that's why in Scrum, you have a very high touch collaboration model where there's a daily sync up, like a daily Scrum. And there's, most of the meetings are team meetings, if you will. Or actually, all of the meetings are team meetings. In Kanban, you don't have that high touch collaboration. So a lot of such parameters need to be considered. And what I would recommend is looking at the Kinnaman model, you can actually develop a set of like 20, 30, 40 questions, which you can, disperse across scope, cost, and time. And you can make some sort of an agile suitability matrix. So whenever a new initiative comes down the pipeline, you run it through that litmus test of those 20, 30 questions, and then give each response a score, total up that score. If you've been 5 and 15, Scrum is probably a better fit. If you've been 10 and 25, Kanban's a better fit. So the Kinnaman model will walk you through what it calls as 4 different problem domains: problems that are clear, problems that are complex, problems that are chaotic, and problems that are complicated. In my experience, Kanban tends to be more on the chaotic side of things, and Scrum tends to be more on the complex side of things. And so they go into details of what makes a product a complex product, what makes it chaotic product, what makes it complicated, what makes it clear. And based off of that, you can choose certain different solution frameworks or methods available out there.